Okay, I said I'd post an explanation for how the Paraline thingy works that I built, and here we go. Okay, so here is a speaker. You can take any speaker you want, and when you put a speaker in a room, the sound expands, I guess theoretically something like a spherical expansion. In reality, it really depends on a lot of things, the baffle, if there's a waveguide, nearby obstructions. The thing with the Paraline is that we are limiting the radiation. We are limiting the radiation so that it's radial. The sound from the speaker is only radiating in 360 degrees. It's not going up, it's just expanding out like a ring. So picture a series of concentric rings expanding from the center of the speaker, and that's what the Paraline is doing. Now, you might look at that and think, oh, well, it's going to resonate because the height is the same across the entire device, but actually it doesn't resonate, and the reason why is that each ring has a larger volume than the previous ring. So the center ring has a volume of something like 5 centimeters, 5 square centimeters, and then as it goes out, it gets the volume of each ring gets larger and larger and larger. Now, we could just leave it at that and just have the sound expand in a ring, but the clever part is folding it. And so Danley uses a specific folding scheme in his Paraline, which is sold by VTC, and that folding mechanism is designed to take the round wavefront of the speaker and turn it into basically a rectangular shape, kind of like a ribbon. And that rectangular shape is a good match for an array. But I don't want to use this Paraline thingy for array, so I'm doing something different, which is that I'm taking the same radial expansion, but I'm folding it a different way. And the way that I'm folding it should be pretty obvious if you look at this piece of paper here, but I'll go ahead and fold it for you anyways. Let's see if I can fold this while holding my iPad. So, let's see. If you look here, it's 1, 2, 3. Hang on, I gotta put the iPad down. 1 sec. Okay, so here's the folding that I'm using for my Paraline looking thingy. I'm taking a radial expansion. I'm folding it so that the edges are square. And I'm using that type of folding pretty much because it's efficient on space, it's easy to build, and it facilitates a square mouth, which is a good match for the unity and synergy horns. In other words, a traditional unity or synergy horn has a round compression driver at the apex of the horn, and because the apex is round, you have this transformation from round to square. This does that same transformation, but it does it inside of the Paraline. So here's it, it's still got our radial expansion. We're just folding it over. Now you will notice that here in the corners, there's a little bit of overlap, and you're probably going to get a little bit of error right there, my finger's showing. But if you look at the overlap, it's pretty small. So it probably affects the polars a little bit. I haven't done any measurements yet, but if you've listened to the videos I posted, you can tell that the thing extends pretty high in frequency. Oh yeah, another thing that's kind of important. The reason I did it on graph paper is all of this scales. So if we look here, we have Okay, if we look here, we have actually, I'll post the measurements in the thread because it's hard for me to measure this thing with a tape measure and also talk about it. But if you look at the squares, what's important here is that this thing scales. So, for instance, this one here, I believe, is about 5 inches in diameter. You could build this thing to be 6 inches, 8 inches, 20 inches, 1 inch. Pick whatever size you want. It scales. The only thing that you have to calculate is the volume of each ring. And in the post on DIY Audio, I've shown the volume of the rings for this one. You can calculate the volumes of the rings yourself. It's just plain old trigonometry. The one that I built maps out to a mouth that's 2 1/4 inches square. So that's a pretty decently large mouth for a horn that goes to 18 kilohertz. Typically a horn with even a 1-inch mouth has a hard time getting to 18 kilohertz. So the fact that this thing can go so high in frequency is kind of a testament to keeping the wavefront coherent, which is exactly what this radial expansion does. If you look at the graphs here, you can see that you have to kind of play around with the geometry of this so that you minimize overlap while keeping it square. And then you'll see here that when it's all said and done, the mouth here is about 25% of the size of the entire device. So, for instance, in mine with a 2 1/4 inch mouth, if you were to unfold the entire Paraline, it'd be about 9 inches in diameter. So it's a pretty good size, but it's folded down into a footprint that's much smaller. Oh, that's another thing too, is if you read the patent, and I'm not sure if Danley would disagree with me, but if you read the patent, there's a lot of talk about ray tracing and reflectors and things like that. I think this is pretty much just a clever way of folding a horn. Unless I'm missing something in the patent, I don't know why the reflector is even really all that important. As I see it, the Paraline is just a conventional horn which has been flattened and then folded over. The only reason you can't simulate it properly in programs like horn response is because horn response can't calculate the fact that the wavefront does not expand until it exits the Paraline. And I'll get into more detail on that in the thread, but that's an important point, and it's one of the advantages of the Paraline. For instance, I was playing it, listening to some music today, and I found that the Paraline goes so high in frequency that you almost don't need the tweeter. It's incredible that the mid-ranges in the Paraline, to me it sounds like they go up to probably about 5 kilohertz, which is at least an octave higher than they would in a conventional conical horn. And I believe the reason that the Paraline plays so high in frequency is because the wavefront can't expand until it reaches the mouth. So basically inside of the Paraline, there's no wavefront expansion. The sound is pretty much acting like water, and it escapes at the Paraline mouth. Anyways, hope that helps. I'll post some pictures of the internals of it in the next day or two.